Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a world where music could only exist in the specific places, where melodies were tethered to locations, chained to furniture, confined within walls. For most of human history, this was simply reality. Music happened where instruments lived, where orchestras gathered, where record players sat stationary in living rooms. The idea that you could carry an entire album, let alone thousands of songs, in your pocket as you walk down the street would have seemed like pure science fiction. Yet in the span of just 4 decades, from the late 1970s to the present day, we've witnessed one of the most remarkable technological and cultural transformations in human history. The evolution of portable music fundamentally changed not just how we listen to music, but how we experience the world itself, how we navigate public spaces, how we define our identities, and how we structure the narratives of our daily lives. This is the story of 3 revolutionary devices that each defined an era. The Sony Walkman, which liberated music from living rooms and made it a companion for joggers and commuters. The Discman, which brought CD-quality sound to portable listening despite seemingly impossible technical challenges. And the iPod, which didn't just put 1,000 songs in your pocket, but transformed the entire music industry and paved the way for the smartphone revolution. But more than a story of gadgets and technology, this is a story about human desire. The desire for a personal soundtrack, for control over our auditory environment, for the ability to carry our favorite artists with us wherever we go. It's about the teenagers who made mixtapes for their crushes, the commuters who used music to create bubbles of privacy on crowded trains, the joggers who discovered that the right song could push them further than they thought possible. Before we dive into the revolution, we need to understand what came before. We need to appreciate just how radical the idea of portable music really was. The pre-portable era, when music was furniture. In the 1960s and 1970s, music in the home centered around substantial pieces of furniture. The stereo system wasn't just electronics. It was often a major piece of living room architecture. Families saved for months or years to afford quality hi-fi systems, which featured turntables, receivers, and speakers that could each weigh dozens of pounds. These systems were designed to stay put, requiring careful setup and calibration to achieve optimal sound quality. The listening experience was correspondingly formal. Playing an album was an event. You would select a record from your carefully organized collection, remove it delicately from its sleeve, place it on the turntable with precision, and lower the needle with the care of a surgeon. Then you would sit, often with the album cover in your hands, reading the liner notes, studying the artwork, experiencing the album as the artist intended, from beginning to end, in order, without distraction. Outside the home, music was even more limited. Car radios existed, of course, but you were at the mercy of radio programmers and advertisements. Jukeboxes in diners and bars offered some selection, but required coins and operated in public spaces. Portable transistor radios, popular from the 1950s onward, could receive radio broadcasts, but again, you couldn't choose your music. You could only choose which station's choices you'd accept. Live music required going to specific venues at specific times. If you wanted to hear your favorite band, you had to buy a ticket, travel to a venue, and experience it in a crowd. The idea of having your favorite concert in your ears while walking to work was inconceivable. This spatial limitation of music shaped culture in profound ways. Music was communal by necessity. Teenagers gathered around radios or record players, sharing the experience. Hi-fi enthusiasts invited friends over for listening sessions, showing off their equipment and favorite albums. Music fandom required pilgrimage to record stores, to concerts, to places where music lived. There were some early attempts at portability, but they were limited and impractical. 8-track players, popular in cars during the 1970s, were bulky and had poor sound quality. Reel-to-reel portable tape recorders existed, but were heavy, expensive, and primarily used by professionals. The technology for truly personal, portable, high-quality music simply didn't exist yet. But the desire was there. People wanted to take their music with them. They wanted to have their favorite songs while jogging, while commuting, while traveling. They wanted to transform their daily experiences with personal soundtracks. The technology just needed to catch up with the dream. The Walkman revolution. Music walks out the door. On July 1st, 1979, Sony Corporation released a product that would change the world, the Walkman TPS L2. It wasn't the first portable cassette player. Similar devices existed, but it was the first to capture the public imagination and become a cultural phenomenon. The Walkman transformed music from something tied to a place into something that moved with you, a personal bubble of sound that could accompany you anywhere. The genesis of the Walkman is surrounded by several origin stories, but most accounts credit Sony's co-founder Masaru Ibuka and honorary chairman Akio Morita. Ibuka wanted to listen to opera during long trans-Pacific flights, and the existing portable players were too bulky and had poor sound quality. He asked if Sony's engineers could modify a compact cassette recorder, removing the recording circuit and speaker to make it smaller and lighter, and instead adding a stereo amplifier circuit and a headphone jack for better audio quality. The engineering team, led by Kozo Osoni, delivered a prototype that exceeded expectations. The device was astonishingly compact, roughly the size of a paperback book, and light enough to carry comfortably. More importantly, it delivered sound quality that rivaled home stereo systems, a feat that seemed almost magical for such a small device. However, the Walkman faced significant internal skepticism at Sony. Many executives worried that a tape player without recording capability would never sell. Why would consumers buy a device that could only play back? The ability to record had been a key selling point of previous tape devices. Some marketing staff projected they might sell 5,000 units a month at best. Morita overruled the skeptics. He believed the Walkman addressed a fundamental human desire, the wish to have your music wherever you go, without disturbing others. He was so confident that he reportedly told his team that if the Walkman failed, he would resign. This wasn't just a business calculation. It was a vision of how technology could change lifestyle. The original TPS-L2 had several distinctive features that seem quaint in retrospect, but were innovative for their time. It included 2 headphone jacks, so 2 people could listen together. Morita envisioned the Walkman as potentially social, not just isolating. It featured an orange hotline button that activated a small built-in microphone and muted the music, allowing users to have conversations without removing their headphones. These features acknowledged that personal portable music was entering a social world and needed to accommodate human interaction. The sound quality was remarkably good, especially with the lightweight headphones Sony developed specifically for the Walkman. Previous portable audio devices had used tiny, tinny speakers or bulky, uncomfortable headphones. Sony's engineers created foam-cushioned headphones that were light, comfortable for extended wear, and delivered impressive audio fidelity. These headphones became iconic in their own right, their orange sponge covers instantly recognizable. The initial marketing campaign in Japan was creative and youth-focused. Sony gave Walkmans to celebrities and trendsetters, creating buzz before the official release. They hired young people to walk around trendy Tokyo neighborhoods wearing Walkmans and dancing to music, letting curious passers-by try them. The message was clear. This device was about freedom, youth, and energy. Despite the buzz, initial sales were modest. But as word spread about the Walkman's capabilities and convenience, demand exploded. Within the first year, Sony was struggling to keep up with orders. The Walkman had struck a chord. People did want to take their music with them, desperately. The name Walkman itself became the subject of some internal debate. Sony's international marketing team initially resisted it, considering it grammatically incorrect and potentially confusing. The device was marketed under different names in different regions at first. Soundabout in the United States, Stowaway in the UK. But Walkman proved so catchy and memorable that Sony eventually standardized on it globally, and it became one of the most recognized brand names in the world. The technical specifications of the original TPS L2 were modest by today's standards, but impressive for 1979. It ran on 2 AA batteries, providing roughly 4 hours of playback time. It measured approximately 3.5 inches wide, 5.5 inches tall, and 1.25 inches deep, and weighed about 14 ounces, including batteries, light enough to clip to a belt or slip into a large pocket. It featured basic playback controls: play, stop, fast forward, and rewind. There was no recording function, no radio, just pure playback of pre-recorded cassette tapes. The cultural impact of the Walkman came quickly and profoundly. Within months, the device became a symbol of modernity and individualism. Suddenly, public spaces were transformed. Commuters on trains, previously reading newspapers or staring into space, now moved to personal soundtracks. Joggers, who had previously run in silence or to the ambient sounds of their neighborhood, now pounded the pavement to the motivating beat of their favorite music. The Walkman created what anthropologists would later call a personal stereo culture. Users could create bubbles of privacy in public spaces, controlling their auditory environment even when surrounded by strangers. This was revolutionary. For the first time, individuals could opt out of the shared soundscape of public life and into a personal one. There was some social concern about this development. Critics worried that the Walkman would make people antisocial, disconnected from their surroundings and each other. Some commentators fretted about the safety implications of people walking or jogging while unable to hear approaching vehicles or other hazards. Others worried about hearing damage from prolonged headphone use at high volumes. These concerns weren't entirely unfounded. but they also missed the larger point. The Walkman was responding to a real human need. Modern urban life could be overwhelming, exhausting, alienating. The ability to create a personal soundtrack, to choose what you heard instead of being subjected to traffic noise, construction sounds, or strangers' conversations, gave people a sense of control and comfort. The Walkman wasn't making people antisocial. It was giving them a tool to manage the challenges of social density. For many users, the Walkman became deeply personal. They carefully curated their tape collection for different moods and activities. There were tapes for working out, tapes for commuting, tapes for relaxing, tapes for heartbreak. The Walkman and its cassette tapes became extensions of identity and emotion. The success of the original Walkman spawned countless iterations and improvements. Sony released new models at a rapid pace throughout the 1980s, each smaller, lighter, or more feature-rich than the last. The WM2, released in 1981, was dramatically smaller than the original, about the size of a cassette case itself. It was a marvel of miniaturization that seemed almost impossible. How could something so small contain all the necessary components? Other innovations followed. Auto reverse, which allowed tapes to play both sides without manually flipping them. Dolby noise reduction, which improved sound quality. AM/FM radio tuners. Bass boost features. Rechargeable batteries. Water-resistant sports models. And even models with built-in solar panels. Each innovation addressed user desires or problems, refining the Walkman into an increasingly perfect personal music device. The professional market also embraced the Walkman. Journalists used them to conduct interviews and review recordings. Musicians used them to listen to rough mixes and get inspiration. Language learners used them for audio lessons during commutes. The Walkman proved versatile beyond music, though music remained its primary use. Sony faced competition as the Walkman concept proved successful. Other electronics companies rushed to release their own portable cassette players: Panasonic, Aiwa, Toshiba, Sanyo, and many others. Some of these competitors offered lower prices, more features, or different design aesthetics. The market became crowded with personal stereos, though many people called them all Walkmans, a sign that Sony had achieved something rare. Their brand name had become synonymous with the product category itself. But Sony maintained leadership through superior engineering, design, and marketing. They understood that the Walkman wasn't just electronics, it was lifestyle technology. Their advertisements didn't focus on technical specifications. They showed young, active, attractive people enjoying life with their Walkmans. The message was aspirational. Buy a Walkman, and you too could have this freedom, this joy, this control over your auditory experience. By the mid-1980s, the Walkman had become ubiquitous in developed nations. Walk down any city street, ride any public transit system, visit any gym, and you would see people with foam-covered headphones, nodding to beats only they could hear. The Walkman had gone from novelty to necessity in just a few years, a remarkable trajectory that spoke to how perfectly it addressed a latent human desire. The Walkman also enabled new relationships with music. Because you could listen to the same tape repeatedly without disturbing others, people developed deeper connections to albums. They learned every lyric, every instrumental nuance, every production detail. This intimate, repeated listening was different from the casual radio experience or even home stereo listening, which often occurred while doing other things. With a Walkman, the music was right there, in your ears, demanding attention, providing company. The device also changed exercise culture. Jogging and aerobics had been growing in popularity through the 1970s, but the Walkman supercharged these trends. Music proved to be a powerful motivator for physical activity. Studies showed that people exercised longer and harder when listening to music, and the Walkman made this effortless. Suddenly, the slightly tedious experience of jogging could be transformed into an adventure. The repetitive movements of aerobics could be energized by perfect beats. The fitness boom of the 1980s and the Walkman boom were intertwined phenomena. Fashion adapted to the Walkman too. Clothing manufacturers added pockets and clips specifically designed to hold personal cassette players. Athletic wear featured special pouches. Even formal wear sometimes accommodated the technology. Business people wanted their music during commutes too. The Walkman became not just a device you used, but an accessory you wore, and it needed to be integrated into how people dressed. The Sony Walkman represented more than just a technological achievement. It represented a shift in how humans related to technology and to media. It made technology personal, portable, and integral to daily life in a way that previous devices had not. It proved that consumers would enthusiastically adopt devices that gave them control and convenience, even at the cost of social connectivity or safety concerns. Looking back, the Walkman was the first device that many people owned that was purely about individual experience rather than family or communal experience. The television was watched by families. The home stereo was shared. But the Walkman was yours alone. This marked a cultural shift toward individualized media consumption that would only accelerate with subsequent technologies. The cassette mixtape, an art form born from portability. While the Walkman made portable music possible, it was the humble cassette tape that made portable music personal. The cassette tape, originally developed by Philips in 1963, had been around for years before the Walkman, primarily used for voice recording and dictation. But the combination of the Walkman's popularity and cassette tape's recordability created something unexpected and culturally significant: the mixtape phenomenon. The mixtape was more than just a collection of songs copied onto a blank cassette. It was an art form, a medium of expression, a social currency, and for many people, a deeply personal creative outlet. Making a mixtape required thought, care, and time. You had to select songs that worked together, order them in a sequence that created a narrative or emotional arc, and physically record them in real time from vinyl records, CDs, or radio broadcasts. The technical process of making a mixtape was both simple and demanding. You needed a source of music, typically vinyl records or the radio, later CDs, and a cassette deck with recording capability. Many home stereos and boomboxes featured dual cassette decks, specifically to enable tape-to-tape copying. You would queue up your source music, press record, and play simultaneously on your cassette deck, and the song would be copied to your blank tape. This real-time recording meant that making a mixtape required patience. A 90-minute mixtape took 90 minutes to record, plus however long it took to select songs, queue them up, and write on the cassette label. There was no speeding up the process. This temporal investment made mixtapes meaningful. You couldn't casually throw together a mixtape. It required commitment. The constraints of the medium shaped the art form. Most blank cassettes came in standard lengths: 60 minutes, 30 per side, 90 minutes, 45 per side, or sometimes 120 minutes. This meant you had to consider tape length when selecting songs. Could you fit one more track on side A, or would it cut off? Did the songs you wanted fit evenly across both sides? Or would one side be much shorter than the other? These weren't just technical problems. They were creative challenges that influenced the final product. The order of songs mattered immensely. Unlike modern playlists that can be shuffled or easily rearranged, a mixtape sequence was fixed. Once recorded, changing the order meant starting over. This permanence made sequencing crucial. Mixtape creators thought carefully about flow, how songs transition from one to another, how energy levels rose and fell across the tape, how the last song on side A related to the first song on side B. Many people developed personal philosophies and rules about mixtape construction. Some believed each side should be its own coherent entity. Others thought of the tape as a single continuous work, with a flip from side A to side B as an intermission. Some people started strong, putting their best songs first. Others built slowly, saving peak moments for later. Some prioritized thematic coherence, gathering songs about similar topics. Others favored sonic or emotional progression, regardless of lyrical content. The pause between songs was another creative element. Some tape makers recorded straight from one song to the next, creating a seamless DJ-like experience. Others left deliberate gaps, allowing silence to create separation and emphasis. The more obsessive creators used the pause button expertly, cutting off applause from live recordings or radio DJ chatter, creating their own perfect edits. The physical cassette itself became a canvas. People decorated labels with elaborate artwork, colored markers, stickers, collages. The cassette case might include handwritten liner notes explaining song choices, credits listing where each track came from, or personal messages. Some people created elaborate J-card inserts, the folded paper that slipped into the cassette case, with track listings, artwork, and typography that rivaled professional releases. Mixtapes served many social functions. The most famous was the romantic mixtape. Countless teenagers and young adults labored over mixtapes for crushes, girlfriends, boyfriends, carefully selecting songs to communicate feelings they couldn't express directly. These romantic mixtapes were gestures of affection and declarations of intent, with each song choice carrying meaning. Did they include their song? Did they add any slow songs that might suggest physical intimacy? What message did the tape's title convey? Receiving a mixtape from someone you were romantically interested in was momentous. You would analyze it like a sacred text, searching for hidden meanings in every song choice and order. Did they put a breakup song on there? That can't be good. But they also included that love song we danced to, so maybe they do feel the same way. The mixtape became a medium for emotional communication, especially for people who found direct verbal expression difficult. But mixtapes weren't only romantic. Friends made mixtapes for each other, introducing one another to new artists or celebrating shared musical tastes. These friendship mixtapes were gifts, time and thought made tangible. Making someone a mixtape said, "I care enough about you to spend hours creating something personal just for you." people also made mixtapes for themselves, for specific purposes and moods. Road trip tapes were carefully calibrated for long drives, balancing energy with variety. Workout tapes featured high-tempo motivational songs. Study tapes offered instrumental or mellow vocal tracks that wouldn't distract. Heartbreak tapes provided catharsis through sad songs that validated and processed emotional pain. The mixtape culture created its own economy and etiquette. Blank cassettes were cheap, but not free. So there was an understanding that if someone made you a mixtape, you would eventually reciprocate, maintaining a balance of exchange. There were unspoken rules about what constituted a good mixtape. Don't include songs the recipient already hates. Don't make every song obscure just to show off your knowledge. Do include at least some discovery. Record stores and music publications contributed to mixtape culture. Many independent record stores sold blank tapes, often with hipper branding than generic pharmacy blanks. Music magazines like Rolling Stone and NME occasionally published articles about mixtape art, validating it as a legitimate form of creative expression. Some alternative publications even featured mixtape reviews, treating readers' home-recorded compilations with the same seriousness as commercial releases. The legal status of mixtapes existed in a grey area. Technically, copying copyrighted music without permission violated copyright law, but prosecuting individuals for making mixtapes for personal use or to give to friends was impractical and politically unwise. The music industry largely turned a blind eye to personal tape copying, though they did campaign against commercial piracy. There was an implicit understanding that mixtapes weren't a threat to music sales. If anything, they promoted music discovery and fandom. Some musicians embraced mixtape culture. They recognized that fans making tapes for each other spread their music and built communities around their work. Others were more ambivalent, particularly as they saw album sales decline during the late 1970s and early 1980s. A decline the industry partially blamed on home taping. The famous "Home Taping is Killing Music" campaign, symbolized by a cassette tape with a skull and crossbones, tried to discourage copying, but it was largely ineffective and even became ironic or cool among some music fans. The decline of the mixtape corresponded with the rise of CD burning in the late 1990s and, eventually, digital playlists in the 2000s. While CDs and playlists could do many of the same things as mixtapes, something was lost in the transition. The physicality of the cassette, the time investment required, the finality of the sequence. These limitations made mixtapes special. Digital playlists are convenient and flexible, but they lack the weight and permanence of a carefully crafted cassette. Today, mixtapes are objects of nostalgia. The cassette format has seen a minor revival, with some independent musicians releasing limited cassette runs for collectors and enthusiasts. But the mixtape's greatest legacy isn't the physical object. It's the idea that ordinary people can curate and share music as a form of expression and connection. Every Spotify playlist, every YouTube music compilation, every DJ set traces its lineage back to teenagers hunched over dual cassette decks, hitting pause at just the right moment, crafting the perfect sequence, creating something that said, "This is who I am, this is how I feel, this is what I want to share with you." The Discman era, the promise and challenge of perfect sound. By the mid-1980s, The Sony Walkman had become a global phenomenon, and the cassette tape was the dominant format for portable music. But a new format was emerging that promised to revolutionize music quality: the compact disc. Introduced in 1982 as a joint development by Sony and Philips, the CD offered several advantages over cassette tapes and vinyl records: digital sound quality with no degradation over time, no physical needle wear, random access to tracks, and compact size. For home listening, CDs quickly gained market share, and by the late 1980s, they were outselling vinyl in many markets. But CDs presented a seemingly insurmountable challenge for portable listening. They were read by a laser that required extremely precise alignment and stability. Any vibration or movement could cause the laser to skip, losing its place on the disc. This was fine for stationary home players, but disastrous for portable devices that would be jostled in bags, worn while walking, or used while exercising. Nonetheless, Sony and other companies recognized that if they could solve the portability problem, portable CD players would have enormous appeal. CD sound quality was objectively superior to cassette tapes, with wider frequency response, better dynamic range, and no tape hiss. CDs also didn't degrade with repeated playing the way tapes did. And unlike cassettes, CDs allowed instant access to any track. No more fast-forwarding and rewinding to find a specific song. Sony released the first portable CD player, the D50, marketed as the Discman, in November 1984, just 5 years after the original Walkman. The D50 was larger and heavier than a Walkman, measuring about 6 inches in diameter and nearly 2 inches thick, and weighing about a pound. It ran on 4 AA batteries or a power adapter, and the batteries lasted only about 2 hours of playback, much less than a Walkman. The D50 faced the challenge that engineers had feared: skip resistance. Even careful walking could cause the laser to lose tracking, resulting in stuttering sound or complete playback failure. This made the early Discman impractical for most portable uses. You couldn't jog with it. Walking briskly was risky. Even using it on public transportation, with its stops, starts, and bumps, was problematic. The D50 was portable in the sense that you could carry it, but not truly mobile in the sense that you could use it while moving. Despite these limitations, the D50 found a market. Audiophiles who primarily wanted CD quality for stationary or low movement situations, reading in a park, sitting on a plane, relaxing in a hotel room, appreciated it. The device also benefited from the aspirational quality of CD technology. Owning a Discman signaled that you were an early adopter, someone who valued quality and innovation. But Sony and their competitors knew that solving the skip problem was essential for portable CD players to achieve true mainstream success. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, enormous engineering effort went into developing anti-skip technology. The solution involved several complementary approaches. First, engineers developed better shock absorption systems. Early methods were mechanical, using springs and dampeners to isolate the CD reading mechanism from external movement. These systems helped, but they added weight and size to already bulky devices, and they couldn't completely eliminate skipping from sharp movements. The breakthrough came with electronic anti-skip technology, specifically digital audio buffering. This system read audio data from the CD faster than it was played back, storing several seconds of music in electronic memory. When a skip or jolt occurred, the laser might lose its place momentarily, but the audio playback continued uninterrupted from the buffer. By the time the buffer emptied, the laser had typically relocated its position and refilled the buffer. This buffering technology meant that brief disturbances, a step while walking, a bump in the road, became invisible to the listener. The first Discman with electronic anti-skip was Sony's D121, released in 1988, featuring 1 second buffer memory. While 1 second seems brief, it was sufficient to smooth out most walking-related skips. Subsequent models increased buffer time to 3 seconds, then 5, then 10, and eventually to 40 seconds or more by the late 1990s. With 40 seconds of buffer, a Discman could theoretically survive being dropped and picked up without the user hearing any interruption. These anti-skip improvements transformed the Discman from a marginal portable device into a genuine Walkman competitor. By the early 1990s, Discmans were common sights on streets, in gyms, and on public transportation. They had become truly portable, not just theoretically mobile. Other improvements accompanied anti-skip technology. Manufacturers reduced size and weight through miniaturization and the use of lighter materials. They improved battery efficiency, extending playback time. They added features like bass boost, programmable playlists, and repeat functions. Some models included AM/FM radio tuners. Others added weatherproofing for sports use. The most significant operational improvement was the development of ultra-slim, lightweight headphones. Early Discman users often used the same over-ear or on-ear headphones as Walkman users, which were bulky and sometimes uncomfortable for extended wear. The 1990s saw the popularization of in-ear earbud headphones, which were far lighter and more compact. While audiophiles often criticized earbuds for inferior sound quality compared to larger headphones, the convenience and comfort made them hugely popular for portable listening. Competition in the portable CD market was fierce. Sony faced challenges from Panasonic, Philips, Iowa, Kenwood, and many others. This competition drove rapid innovation and price reductions. A Discman that cost $300 in 1985 had equivalents selling for under $50 by the late 1990s. This democratization of technology meant that portable CD listening became accessible to nearly everyone, not just affluent early adopters. The Discman also benefited from and contributed to the growth of the CD market overall. As more people owned portable CD players, they bought more CDs. As CD sales grew, prices fell and selection increased. This virtuous cycle accelerated the transition from vinyl and cassette to CD as the dominant music format. By the mid-1990s, CDs accounted for the majority of music sales in most developed countries. For consumers, the Discman offered several advantages beyond sound quality. CD booklets provided lyrics, artwork, and liner notes in a durable format that didn't degrade like cassette inserts. The ability to skip directly to any track was liberating after years of rewinding and fast-forwarding. And unlike cassettes, which degraded with each play and could be eaten by faulty players, CDs were robust and reliable. A well-cared-for CD would sound as good on its 1000th play as on its first. However, the Discman never fully replaced the Walkman in all contexts. The cassette tape's recordability remained valuable. People still made mixtapes, and the Walkman remained the device of choice for listening to them. The Discman was also larger and less pocketable than many Walkman models, and its battery life, though improved, never matched the best Walkmans. For activities involving significant movement, serious running, most sports, Walkmans remained superior through the 1990s. The late 1990s saw the peak of Discman popularity. Manufacturers released special editions with eye-catching translucent colored plastic cases, targeting younger consumers. Some models featured car kit adapters, allowing them to connect to car stereos, serving as an upgrade for vehicles without CD players. Others included line-in recording capabilities, letting users record from their Discman to cassette tape, a reverse of the normal recording flow that reflected the CD's dominance. But even at its peak, the Discman era was ending. New technology was emerging that would make both Walkmans and Discmans seem antiquated: digital MP3 players. These devices used computer files rather than physical media, storing music on memory chips or tiny hard drives. They were smaller than Discmans, had no skipping issues whatsoever, and could hold far more music than a single CD. The digital revolution was coming, and it would transform portable music even more radically than the Walkman had. Looking back, the Discman era seems brief and transitional, a bridge between analog cassette tapes and digital files. It lasted roughly 15 years as a mainstream device, from the late 1980s to the early 2000s, compared to the Walkman's 20-plus year dominance and the iPod's subsequent decade-long reign. But the Discman's cultural impact was significant. It proved that consumers would embrace superior audio quality and were willing to accept larger devices and shorter battery life in exchange for that quality. It accelerated the CD format's dominance, helping to standardize digital audio. And the anti-skip technology developed for Discmans contributed to later innovations in portable electronics, demonstrating how software and buffering could compensate for physical limitations. For a generation of music fans, the Discman was their first experience of truly high-quality portable audio. They remember the pleasure of hearing their favorite albums in clarity that cassette tapes couldn't match, the joy of skipping instantly to a beloved track, the ritual of carrying a CD case or wallet filled with carefully selected discs. The Discman showed them that portable music could be not just convenient, but genuinely excellent. The Evolution of Portable Music, Part 2. The Digital Transition, MP3s and the Napster Revolution. While Sony and other manufacturers refined their Discman technology through the 1990s, a parallel revolution was occurring in the computer world that would ultimately make physical media obsolete for portable music. This revolution centered on a file format called MP3, and it would fundamentally transform not just how we carried music, but how we acquired it, owned it, and thought about it. MP3, short for MPEG-1, Audio Layer 3, was developed in Germany by researchers at the Fraunhofer Institute in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The technology used psychoacoustic principles to compress audio files dramatically while maintaining acceptable sound quality. An MP3 file could be roughly 1/10 the size of the uncompressed audio on a CD, while sounding nearly identical to most listeners. This compression made music files small enough to store on computer hard drives, share over the internet, and eventually carry on portable devices. Initially, MP3 was primarily used by technology enthusiasts and audiophiles who enjoyed the ability to store their CD collections on their computers. Through the mid-1990s, creating MP3 files required technical knowledge. You needed software to rip CDs to your hard drive and encode them to MP3 format. The process was time-consuming. A single album might take 30 minutes or more to rip and encode on typical home computers of the era. But as internet connections grew faster and computers became more powerful, MP3s began spreading beyond the technical elite. College students, with access to fast university internet connections, began sharing music files over network systems. Online communities formed around MP3 trading. And then, in June 1999, a service launched that would accelerate the MP3 revolution exponentially. Napster. Napster, created by college student Sean Fanning and entrepreneur Sean Parker, was a peer-to-peer file-sharing service that made finding and downloading MP3s almost effortless. Unlike previous file-sharing methods that required knowing where files were located, Napster created a searchable database of all music available on users' computers. You could search for any artist or song, see who had it, and download it directly from their computer to yours. The impact was explosive. Within a year, Napster had tens of millions of users. College dormitory networks buckled under the bandwidth demands of students downloading music constantly. For the first time, ordinary people had access to virtually unlimited music, completely free. Want to hear that obscure B-side? Search Napster. Curious about an artist you had heard mentioned but never heard? Download their album. Want to hear a song from your childhood that's out of print? Someone probably has it on Napster. This democratization of access was thrilling for users, but terrifying for the music industry. Record labels had built their business model on controlling distribution. They manufactured physical products, vinyl, cassettes, CDs, and sold them through retailers. Napster and MP3s threatened to make that entire infrastructure obsolete. Why would anyone buy a CD when they could get the same music free online? The Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA, sued Napster in late 1999, and major artists like Metallica and Dr. Dre joined the legal battle. The lawsuits argued that Napster facilitated copyright infringement on a massive scale. Napster's defense, that they were simply providing technology and users were responsible for their own actions, proved legally insufficient. In July 2001, a court ordered Napster to cease operations. The original Napster shut down, though the brand name was later purchased and attached to legal music services. But Napster's closure didn't end file sharing. Decentralized alternatives like Kazaa, LimeWire, and later BitTorrent emerged, spreading file sharing across networks that were harder for the industry to shut down legally. The genie was out of the bottle. Millions of people had experienced unlimited free access to music, and they weren't going back willingly. While the legal and ethical debates raged, entrepreneurs saw an opportunity: legitimate portable MP3 players. If people were creating MP3 collections on their computers, they would want to carry those collections with them. The first portable MP3 player to gain any commercial traction was the Diamond Rio PMP 300, released in September 1998. The Rio was revolutionary despite its limitations. It was smaller than a Discman, had no moving parts, and could hold about an hour of music, roughly one CD's worth, on 32 megabytes of internal memory. It ran on a single AA battery that lasted about 12 hours. For people with MP3 collections, the Rio was liberating. No need to carry multiple CDs or choose which disc to bring. Just load up your favorite tracks and go. The RIAA sued to block the Rio's release, arguing that it facilitated piracy, but the court ruled in Diamond's favor, finding that the device had substantial legitimate uses. People could create MP3s from their own CD collections and carry them legally. This ruling was crucial. It established that MP3 players themselves were legal, even if some users might use them for pirated music. The Rio's success spawned competitors. Companies like Creative Labs, Arcos, iRiver, and many others released MP3 players with increasing storage capacity and features. By 2000, players with 64 megabytes, 128 megabytes, or even 256 megabytes of storage were available. Some used flash memory, which was solid state and had no moving parts. Others used tiny hard drives, which were more fragile, but could hold gigabytes of data. These early MP3 players shared certain characteristics. They generally had small monochrome LCD screens displaying track information. Navigation was through button interfaces, often clunky and non-intuitive. Many required proprietary software to transfer music from computers. Sound quality varied widely, and few had the polish or industrial design of Sony's Walkmans and Discmans. They were functional, but not particularly elegant. Despite their limitations, MP3 players offered undeniable advantages. They were smaller than Discmans, and even most Walkmans. They had no moving parts to skip or break. Battery life was excellent, and most importantly, they could hold multiple albums worth of music in a device smaller than a deck of cards. For people who had grown tired of carrying CD wallets or cassette cases, MP3 players were a revelation. The digital music ecosystem was taking shape. People ripped their CD collections to their computers, organized them in media player software like Winamp or Windows Media Player, and synced their favorite tracks to their MP3 players. Some supplemented their collections with downloads from Napster and its successors. Others purchased digital music from early legitimate services like eMusic. The infrastructure for digital music was emerging, but it was fragmented, technical, and lacked elegance. The stage was set for someone to bring it all together, to create an MP3 player that was not just functional but beautiful, paired with software that was not just adequate but delightful, connected to a music store that was not just available but comprehensive and legitimate. The industry needed a vision of how digital music could be better than physical media in every way. In 2001, that vision arrived. It arrived in a white box with a silhouette of a dancer. It arrived with the slogan, 1,000 songs in your pocket. It arrived from Apple, and it was called the iPod, the iPod Revolution. 1,000 songs in your pocket. On October 23rd, 2001, Steve Jobs stood on a stage at Apple headquarters in Cupertino, California, and changed the music industry forever. With his characteristic showmanship, Jobs reached into his pocket and pulled out a device slightly larger than a deck of cards. "This," he announced, "is iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket." The claim was almost unbelievable. 1,000 songs. The MP3 players on the market typically held 50 to 100 songs at most. 1,000 songs meant you could carry your entire music collection. Not just a selection, not just favorites, but everything, with you wherever you went. For music lovers, this was a transformative promise. The original iPod achieved this capacity through a 5 gigabyte hard drive, the same type used in laptops but miniaturized. This wasn't entirely new. Some competitors had released hard drive-based MP3 players before, but Apple's implementation was superior in crucial ways. The iPod was beautiful, with a sleek white front and polished stainless steel back. It was compact, fitting comfortably in a pocket, and most importantly, it was usable. Previous MP3 players had generally featured button-based navigation that became cumbersome with large music libraries. Scrolling through hundreds of songs using up and down buttons was tedious. Apple's solution was the click wheel, a circular touch-sensitive control that let users scroll through long lists quickly by running their thumb around the wheel's edge. Want to skip 50 songs? Just spin the wheel. Need to jump to a specific letter in your alphabetical artist list? Spin and click. The interface was intuitive, requiring no manual to understand. The iPod's industrial design reflected Apple's design philosophy. It was minimalist, with only 4 buttons plus the click wheel. The white front and earbuds, which came standard, made a bold fashion statement. In a market dominated by black and grey devices, the iPod's whiteness stood out, and those white earbuds became instantly recognizable status symbols. You could spot an iPod user from across the street by their distinctive white headphone cables. But hardware alone, Jobs understood, wasn't enough. The iPod was designed to work seamlessly with iTunes, Apple's music management software. iTunes had launched earlier in 2001 as a Mac-only application for organizing and playing digital music. With the iPod, iTunes became the conduit between your computer and your device. Connecting an iPod to your computer via FireWire cable, later USB, automatically launched iTunes, which would sync your library to your device. This synchronization was far simpler than the clunky file transfer methods of competing devices. The first iPod was Mac-only, which limited its market. But in July 2002, Apple released a Windows-compatible version, opening the iPod to the vast majority of computer users. This move proved crucial for the iPod's mainstream success. Music fans didn't want to switch computers just to use a better MP3 player, but they were happy to adopt the iPod once it worked with their existing Windows PCs. The initial reception of the iPod was mixed. Tech enthusiasts praised its design and usability, but balked at its $399 price tag, significantly more expensive than competing MP3 players. Some critics mocked the device's limitations: no Windows support initially, no ability to record voice memos, battery life of only 10 hours, and dependence on iTunes. The tech blog Slashdot featured particularly harsh comments, with users calling it overpriced and predicting failure. But these critics missed what Apple understood. Most consumers don't buy on specifications alone. They buy experiences. The iPod offered an experience that was substantially better than alternatives. It was pleasant to hold, satisfying to use, and worked reliably. The click wheel was responsive and addictive. People found themselves idly spinning it even when not actively choosing music. The industrial design made it feel premium, and the integration with iTunes meant that managing your music library became almost enjoyable rather than a technical chore. Apple's marketing amplified these experiential qualities. Rather than focusing on technical specifications, iPod advertisements emphasized liberation and joy. The famous silhouette ads, featuring black figures dancing enthusiastically against brightly colored backgrounds with white iPods and earbuds clearly visible, communicated pure pleasure. The message wasn't about gigabytes or battery life. It was about having your music with you always and the happiness that brought. Sales were strong from the start and accelerated rapidly. Apple sold 376,000 iPods in the first year. The following year, sales nearly quintupled. By 2004, iPods were everywhere, and Apple commanded roughly 70% of the portable music player market. The iPod had gone from product to phenomenon. Part of this success came from continuous improvement. Apple released new iPod generations regularly, each refining the formula. The second generation, released in July 2002, featured a touch-sensitive wheel without moving parts and introduced the Windows version. The third generation, April 2003, completely redesigned the controls with touch-sensitive buttons and a slimmer profile. Each iteration brought improvements: more storage, longer battery life, thinner designs, additional features. But the most significant development came in April 2003, the iTunes Music Store. Until then, iPod users primarily loaded music from their own CD collections or often from file-sharing services. There was no easy, legal way to purchase individual digital tracks. Record labels were reluctant to sell digital music, fearing piracy and the loss of lucrative CD sales, where consumers bought entire albums even if they only wanted one or two songs. Jobs convinced the labels to take a chance on digital sales by addressing their concerns. Songs would have copy protection initially to prevent unlimited sharing. The price would be 99 cents per song, high enough to generate real revenue, but low enough to make legitimate purchase more appealing than illegal downloading. And crucially, the iTunes ecosystem was closed and controlled, unlike the anarchic world of file sharing. The iTunes Store launched with 200,000 songs from major labels. It was available only to Mac users initially, but its success was immediate. Apple sold 1 million songs in the first week. The simplicity was revolutionary. Search for a song, click buy, enter your Apple ID password, and within seconds the song was downloading to your computer and ready to sync to your iPod. No subscription, no monthly fees, just simple per-song purchases. In October 2003, iTunes came to Windows and the floodgates opened. Now the vast majority of computer users could legally purchase digital music easily. By December 2003, the iTunes Store had sold 25 million songs. By February 2006, 1 billion songs. The iTunes Store proved that people would pay for music if you made it easy enough and priced it reasonably. Jobs had succeeded where Napster failed. He'd created a legitimate, profitable digital music ecosystem. The combination of iPod hardware and iTunes Store software was synergistic. The iPod wasn't just a device for playing music you already owned. It was a portal to purchasing any music you wanted, instantly. See a song mentioned online, buy it on iTunes and have it on your iPod within minutes. Hear a track in a cafe, find it on iTunes and own it before you leave. The iTunes Store made the iPod more valuable, and the iPod's popularity made the iTunes Store essential for music labels. Apple's dominance of portable music was so complete that iPod became genericized, similar to how Walkman had been. People spoke of iPodding their music, or asked, "Can I put that on my iPod?" when they meant any MP3 player. The white earbuds became iconic, featured in movies and television as shorthand for modernity and youth culture. The iPod's cultural impact extended beyond just music consumption. It changed how people experience public spaces, continuing and amplifying the trend the Walkman had started. With 1,000 songs available, iPod users never had to hear the same track twice in a day unless they wanted to. Every commute, every walk, every moment could have a unique soundtrack. This level of choice and control was unprecedented. The iPod also changed how people related to their music collections. With physical media, your collection was visible. Shelves of CDs or tapes displayed in your home. Collections were curated partly based on physical space limitations. With digital music and the iPod, collections became invisible and effectively unlimited. People accumulated thousands of songs because there was no reason not to. This abundance changed listening habits. Some people became musical omnivores, sampling everything. Others developed decision paralysis, overwhelmed by choice. Apple understood that one size wouldn't fit all users. In January 2004, they released the iPod mini, a smaller, more affordable version, with 4 GB storage, about 1,000 songs, in colorful aluminum cases, silver, gold, pink, blue, and green. The Mini targeted younger users and fashion-conscious consumers who wanted personality in their devices. Despite lower storage, the Mini became Apple's best-selling iPod, proving that for many users, style and portability trumped maximum capacity. The Mini's success prompted further segmentation. In September 2005, Apple released the iPod Nano, replacing the Mini with an even smaller device that used flash memory instead of a hard drive. The Nano was impossibly thin, about 1/4 inch, and remarkably light. It became the new fashionable iPod, available in black or white, and later in multiple colors. That same month, Apple released the iPod Shuffle, an even more radical departure. The Shuffle had no screen at all, just buttons for play, pause, skip, and volume. It was designed for users who wanted something tiny for workouts or commutes and didn't need to choose specific tracks, hence Shuffle, as the device played songs in random order. At $99 for 512 megabytes, about 120 songs, the Shuffle brought the iPod brand to a new price point and user segment. In September 2007, Apple released the iPod Touch, essentially an iPhone without the phone. The Touch featured a touchscreen interface, Wi-Fi connectivity, and could run apps from Apple's App Store, which launched in 2008. The Touch represented the future, a device that played music but could do so much more, from web browsing to gaming to social networking. Each iPod variant found an audience, but the cumulative effect was that Apple offered an iPod for virtually every user type and price point, from the affordable Shuffle to the capacious Classic, as the original iPod line was eventually renamed to the feature-rich Touch. This product line strategy, combined with aggressive marketing and the iTunes Store ecosystem, made Apple almost unassailable in the portable music market through the 2000s. The iPod's peak years were roughly 2005 to 2008. During this period, Apple sold more than 50 million iPods annually. The devices were everywhere, on public transportation, in gyms, at school, at work. They were given as gifts, won as prizes, treasured as prized possessions. For many people, especially young people, the iPod was the most important object they owned, the repository of their identity in musical form. But even at its peak, the iPod's successor was already visible. The iPhone, released in June 2007, included a full-featured iPod app alongside its revolutionary phone and internet capabilities. For the first time, a single device could handle phone calls, text messages, web browsing, email apps, and music playback, all with Apple's characteristic design and usability. The iPhone represented convergence, the consolidation of multiple devices into one. Initially, the iPhone's impact on iPod sales was minimal. The iPhone was expensive, $499 or $599 depending on storage, and limited to AT&T in the United States. Many people owned both an iPhone or other smartphone and an iPod, but as smartphone prices fell and capabilities increased, the logic of carrying a separate music player weakened. Why carry two devices when one could do everything? iPod sales peaked in fiscal year 2008 at 54.8 million units and declined thereafter. The decline was gradual at first. People already owned iPods and saw no reason to upgrade. But by 2010, the trend was clear. Smartphones were taking over portable music. The iPod had been so successful that it had helped enable its own replacement. Apple's development of the iPhone drew heavily on lessons learned from the iPod about user interface design, industrial design, and ecosystem building. In many ways, this was a triumph, not a failure. Apple had recognized early that smartphones would eventually subsume single-purpose devices and had positioned themselves to lead that transition. The iPod's DNA lived on in the iPhone's music app and in every smartphone's music functionality. The iTunes Store continued, evolving to sell not just music, but movies, TV shows, books, and apps. The iPod had served its purpose, liberating music from physical media and making digital music mainstream, and could gracefully yield to the next evolution. Apple continued selling iPods through the 2010s, but they became niche products. The iPod Classic was discontinued in 2014. The Shuffle and Nano were discontinued in 2017. As of this writing, only the iPod Touch remains, positioned more as a gaming and app device for children than a music player. The iPod era is over, but its legacy is profound and permanent. iPod variations, innovation through iteration. story of the iPod isn't just about the original click-wheel model that became iconic. It's also about Apple's willingness to experiment, iterate, and create variations that address different user needs and price points. Each iPod variant represented hypotheses about what users wanted from portable music, and the market's response to these variants shaped Apple's product strategy and, by extension, the entire portable music industry. The iPod mini, introduced in January 2004, was Apple's first major departure from the original iPod formula. At the time, the main iPod had evolved to its third generation, with 10 gigabytes, 15 gigabytes, 20 gigabytes, 30 gigabytes, or 40 gigabyte storage options. These capacities were impressive, but perhaps excessive for casual users. Did everyone really need to carry their entire music library everywhere? The Mini answered a different question. What if we prioritize size, style, and affordability over maximum capacity? The Mini held 4 gigabytes, roughly 1,000 songs, which was exactly the original iPod's marketed capacity and sufficient for most users' daily listening. Its key innovation was its size and appearance. At just 3.6 inches tall and 2 inches wide, the Mini was significantly smaller than the regular iPod. And crucially, it came in colors: silver, gold, pink, blue, and green, breaking from the monochrome aesthetic that had dominated the line. The colored aluminum cases made the Mini a fashion accessory, not just electronics. This was deliberate. Apple understood that for many consumers, especially younger ones, how a device looked and what it said about them was as important as what it did. The Mini could express personality in a way the minimalist white and silver regular iPod couldn't. Priced at $249, $50 less than the entry-level regular iPod, the Mini hit a sweet spot. It was affordable enough for teenagers and college students, but premium enough to feel special. Sales exceeded Apple's expectations dramatically. The Mini became so popular that Apple struggled to manufacture enough units to meet demand. By late 2004, the Mini was outselling the regular iPod, despite having less storage and a smaller screen. The Mini's success validated several principles that would guide Apple's future product development. First, smaller could be better, even if it meant compromised specifications. Second, color and personalization mattered enormously to consumers. Third, there was a huge market for a more affordable entry-level Apple device. These lessons would influence not just future iPods, but also products like the iPhone SE and various MacBook models. In September 2005, Apple replaced the Mini with the iPod Nano, and the Nano represented another leap in miniaturization and design. Using flash memory instead of a hard drive, the Nano was impossibly thin, just 0.27 inches thick, or about the thickness of a pencil. It was 3.5 inches tall and 1.6 inches wide, with a small color screen. Despite the compact size, it held 2 gigabytes or 4 gigabytes of music, later increased to 8 gigabytes. Comparable to the Mini's capacity, the Nano came in white or black initially, returning somewhat to the original iPod's monochrome aesthetic, but with a modern twist. The device felt futuristic, like something from a science fiction film. How could something so thin and light contain so much music and technology? The Nano was a statement about miniaturization, about how far technology had come in just a few years. The the Nano's flash memory had several advantages beyond enabling thinness. It was more durable than hard drives, with no moving parts to break if dropped. It consumed less power, extending battery life, and it had no spin-up delay. Songs started playing instantly. These benefits made the Nano ideal for active use. Runners, gym-goers, and commuters appreciated the Nano's resilience and immediate responsiveness. Over its lifespan, the Nano went through 7 generations, each with significant design changes. The second generation, 2006, made the Nano even smaller, replacing the tall screen with a shorter, wider one and using an aluminum case in multiple colors. The third generation, 2007, made it wider with a larger screen for video playback. The fourth generation, 2008, returned to the tall format but with a curved, tapered design that felt luxurious to hold. The fifth generation, 2009, added a video camera and a larger screen, essentially turning the Nano into a tiny entertainment device beyond just music. The sixth generation, 2010, was radical. It removed all buttons except for volume and sleep-wake, replacing them with a tiny touchscreen. This generation was so small, just 1.5 inches square, that it could be worn on a wrist clip like a watch. And many users did exactly that. The seventh and final generation, 2012, returned to the taller format with a larger touchscreen and home button, essentially looking like a miniature iPod Touch. It came in 7 colors and was marketed as a fitness device with Bluetooth connectivity to wireless headphones and fitness trackers. But by then, smartphones had largely supplanted dedicated music players, and the Nano's market had shrunk significantly. The iPod Shuffle, released alongside the first Nano in September 2005, took minimalism to an extreme. It had no screen at all, just a circular control pad with play/pause, volume, and skip buttons. The device was tiny, about the size of a matchbox, and clipped onto clothing. The Shuffle represented a different philosophy. You loaded music onto it from iTunes, and it played them in random order, or optionally in sequence. The lack of a screen meant you couldn't choose specific songs, but in exchange, you got extreme portability and simplicity. The original Shuffle held 512 megabytes or 1 gigabyte, about 120 or 240 songs, and cost just $99 or $149, the most affordable iPods ever. For users who primarily wanted music for workouts or commutes and didn't need the complexity of choosing songs, the Shuffle was perfect. It was also appealingly priced for gift giving and for parents buying first iPods for children. The second generation Shuffle, 2006, was even smaller, about the size of a postage stamp, and clipped onto clothing or accessories. It came in silver, blue, green, pink, and orange aluminum cases. The third generation, 2009, was controversial. Apple removed all controls from the device itself, putting them on the headphone cord instead. This made the Shuffle incredibly tiny, but meant it only worked with Apple's headphones or specially designed third-party ones. Users and critics disliked this control scheme, and Apple partially reversed it in the fourth generation, 2010, which returned controls to the device while keeping its tiny size. The Shuffle remained in Apple's lineup until 2017, outliving the Classic and Nano. Its persistence reflected a genuine niche. People who wanted the simplest, cheapest, most portable music playback possible. Runners especially appreciated the shuffle's tiny, clip-on design, which didn't bounce or require an armband like larger iPods or phones. The iPod Touch, introduced in September 2007, was the most sophisticated iPod variant and represented Apple's vision for the future. It was essentially an iPhone without the cellular phone capabilities. It had a large touchscreen, 3.5 inches initially, Wi-Fi, and ran a version of iOS, the iPhone's operating system. This meant the Touch could browse the web, check email, run apps, watch videos, view photos, and play games, in addition to playing music. The Touch was expensive, $299 to $399 depending on storage, but it offered tremendous value for users who wanted smartphone-like capabilities without a phone contract. It was particularly popular with younger users whose parents weren't ready to give them phones but wanted to give them internet and app access. The Touch could use iMessage and FaceTime over Wi-Fi, providing communication capabilities without cellular service. From its first generation through its seventh, released in 2019, the Touch evolved similarly to the iPhone, with each generation adding processing power, camera improvements, larger screens, and support for more advanced iOS features. By its later generations, the Touch was positioned as an entry-level iOS device, a gateway to Apple's ecosystem for children, international travelers who wanted to avoid roaming charges, or anyone who wanted iOS capabilities without phone functionality or commitment. The iPod Classic, though it wasn't called Classic until later generations, represented the original iPod's evolution. These were the hard drive-based models that offered maximum storage capacity for users with massive music collections. The Classic grew to hold 160 gigabytes by its final generation, roughly 40,000 songs, making it popular with serious music collectors, audiophiles, and DJs who needed extensive libraries accessible without relying on internet connectivity. The Classic retained the click wheel interface that had become iconic, and its aluminum and stainless steel construction gave it a premium, timeless feel. But as flash memory became cheaper and more capacious, and as streaming services made carrying entire collections less necessary, the Classic's market dwindled. Apple discontinued it in September 2014, marking the end of the original iPod lineage. Each iPod variant taught Apple and the industry lessons about consumer preferences, manufacturing, and product positioning. The success of colored aluminum cases led to more color options across Apple's product lines. The Nano's evolution showed how aggressive design changes could keep a product line fresh. The Shuffle proved that even as Apple pushed into premium markets, there was room for affordable simplicity. And the Touch demonstrated that the future was convergence, multi-function devices that could do everything competently, rather than single-function devices that did one thing exceptionally. Looking at the full iPod family, Classic, Mini, Nano, Shuffle, and Touch, we see a company thinking deeply about different user segments and use cases, willing to experiment boldly and responsive to market feedback. This iterative, user-focused approach wasn't just about selling more iPods. It was Apple building muscle memory for the product development philosophy that would serve them as they expanded into phones, tablets, watches, and other categories. The iPod variations were a laboratory for Apple's future. The competition, fighting for second place. While Apple dominated portable music through the 2000s, numerous competitors tried to challenge the iPod's supremacy. Some offered superior specifications, others competed on price. A few attempted to differentiate through features or design. But despite some quality products and significant marketing investments, no competitor managed to seriously threaten Apple's market leadership during the iPod's prime years. The story of iPod competition is a story of how brand, ecosystem, and user experience can matter more than technical specifications. Microsoft's entry into the portable music player market was perhaps the most anticipated and well-funded challenge to the iPod. In November 2006, Microsoft released the Zune, a hard drive-based player with a 30 gigabyte capacity, a 3-inch color screen, FM radio, and crucially, Wi-Fi connectivity. The Zune was Microsoft's attempt to replicate what Apple had achieved. Not just a device, but an ecosystem, including software. The Zune software for Windows, and an online store, Zune Marketplace. The original Zune had some genuinely innovative features. The Wi-Fi enabled wireless song sharing between Zune devices. You could send a song to a friend's Zune, and they could listen to it 3 times over 3 days before it expired. Microsoft called this squirting music, an unfortunately crude term that invited mockery. The Zune software was actually quite good, with social networking features that let users see what their friends were listening to. The Zune came in black, white, and brown. That brown model became emblematic of the Zune's marketing problems. While Apple offered sleek white or black devices that looked premium, Microsoft offered brown. Brown is not a color associated with cutting-edge technology or youth culture. It was a baffling choice that suggested Microsoft didn't fully understand the aspirational lifestyle marketing that made the iPod desirable. Despite Microsoft's enormous resources and the Zune's legitimate capabilities, it never gained significant market share. Part of the problem was timing. By late 2006, the iPod was already deeply entrenched. Most potential customers already owned iPods or had friends and family members with iPods who recommended them. The network effects were strong. The bigger problem was the ecosystem. iTunes had millions of songs available and worked seamlessly with iPods. The Zune Marketplace was smaller and less established, and the Zune was only compatible with Windows PCs, excluding Mac users, whereas newer iPods worked with both platforms. Microsoft released second and third generation Zunes with improved features, smaller sizes, and more color options, but sales remained disappointing. In October 2011, Microsoft officially discontinued the Zune hardware line, though Zune Marketplace continued until it was replaced by Xbox Music, later Groove Music, in 2012. The Zune became a cautionary tale about how even a tech giant with unlimited resources couldn't easily overcome an entrenched competitor with a superior ecosystem and brand. Creative Labs, a Singapore-based company known for sound cards and PC speakers, was another major iPod competitor. Their Creative Zen line of MP3 players actually predated the iPod. The first Zen was released in 2000. Creative had substantial expertise in digital audio and initially led the hard drive-based portable player market. The Creative Zen Nomad jukebox and subsequent models offered large storage capacities and competitive features. In many specifications, Creative's players matched or exceeded iPods. They often had larger screens, longer battery life, more audio format support, including FLAC and WMA, and built-in FM radio and voice recording. And crucially, Creative's players were often significantly cheaper than comparable iPods. But Creative faced the same fundamental problem as other competitors: ecosystem and design. Creative's software for managing music and syncing devices was clunky and unintuitive compared to iTunes. The devices themselves, while functional, lacked the iPod's elegant industrial design. They felt like electronics rather than lifestyle products. Creative did find niches. Some audiophiles preferred Creative players for their better support of lossless audio formats. Budget-conscious consumers appreciated the lower prices. International markets, where Apple's presence was weaker, sometimes favored Creative. But in the United States and Europe, Creative couldn't compete with Apple's marketing might and ecosystem advantages. In a bitter twist, Creative sued Apple in 2006 for patent infringement, claiming the iPod's interface violated Creative's patents on portable music player navigation. The lawsuit was settled in 2007, with Apple paying Creative $100 million, and Creative joining the Made for iPod accessory program. It was a financial victory for Creative, but symbolized their inability to compete directly in the market. Sony, the company that invented portable music with the Walkman, struggled perhaps most painfully in the MP3 player era. Sony had enormous brand recognition, manufacturing expertise, and music industry connections. They owned a major record label, yet they failed to replicate their Walkman success with digital players. Sony's problems were partly strategic and partly self-inflicted. As a company that owned both electronics and music businesses, Sony was conflicted about digital music. Their music division feared piracy and wanted restrictive DRM, digital rights management copy, protection. This led Sony to develop proprietary formats and systems that hindered rather than helped consumers. Sony's MP3 players initially didn't even support the MP3 format properly. They required users to convert MP3s to Sony's proprietary ATTRACK format using Sony software. This was time-consuming and degraded quality. While Apple embraced MP3s and made everything simple, Sony erected barriers. By the time Sony fully embraced. The evolution of portable music. Part 3. The competition continues, fighting an uphill battle. By the time Sony fully embraced standard MP3 format and removed the most onerous restrictions from their devices in the mid-2000s, Apple had already established dominance. Sony's Walkman-branded MP3 players were well-designed and competently engineered, but they arrived as also-rans in a market where Apple owned not just the leading product, but the cultural zeitgeist. Sony's experience illustrated a broader problem faced by all iPod competitors. They were selling devices while Apple was selling a vision. Apple's marketing didn't talk about gigabytes or bit rates. It showed silhouetted dancers lost in musical joy. Apple didn't advertise features. They sold the experience of having your entire music collection always available, instantly accessible. Competitors focused on specifications, more storage, longer battery life, additional format support. But these rational arguments couldn't compete with Apple's emotional appeal. SanDisk, primarily known for memory cards and USB drives, entered the portable music player market with their Sansa line in 2005. SanDisk's strategy was to compete primarily on price, offering flash memory players significantly cheaper than comparable iPods. A SanDisk Sansa E200 series player might offer similar storage and features to an iPod Nano, but cost $50 to $100 less. For budget-conscious consumers, especially parents buying music players for children or teenagers buying their first device, SanDisk represented excellent value. The Sansa players were solid, functional devices with good battery life and decent sound quality. They supported various audio formats, had FM radio, and some models included voice recording and expandable MSD storage. But SanDisk faced the same ecosystem problem as everyone else. They lacked Apple's software integration and online music store. Users had to manage their music libraries using Windows Media Player or third-party software, then manually sync to their devices. For technically comfortable users, this was fine, but it was friction that the iTunes iPod ecosystem eliminated. SanDisk found moderate success, particularly in international markets and among tech-savvy users who didn't want to pay Apple's premium prices. But they never threatened Apple's market dominance. The Sansa line continued through the early 2000s, before being largely phased out as smartphones took over portable music. iRiver, a South Korean company, produced some of the most innovative and feature-rich iPod alternatives. Their players often led the market in terms of specifications and capabilities. The iRiver H320, for example, released in 2004, featured a color screen, 20GB hard drive, FM radio, voice recording, photo viewing, and could even play back video, all before the iPod could do any of these things except store and play music. iRiver's products appealed to power users and audiophiles who wanted maximum flexibility and control. They supported numerous audio formats including OGG Vorbis, FLAC, and WMA, giving users more options than the iPod's AAC and MP3 support. Some models had user-replaceable batteries, expandable storage, and highly customizable equalizers. But iRiver's strength was also their weakness. Their devices were complicated, with numerous buttons, complex menu systems, and features that required reading manuals to understand. They were designed by and for tech enthusiasts, not for mass-market consumers who wanted simplicity. The industrial design, while functional, lacked Apple's aesthetic refinement. iRiver players developed a cult following among certain user communities, audiophiles, tech hobbyists, and people who enjoyed customizing and optimizing their devices. But this niche success never translated to mainstream market share. By the late 2000s, iRiver had largely exited the Western market, focusing instead on Korea and other Asian markets, where they maintained stronger brand recognition. Arcos, a French company, took a different approach to competing with the iPod. They focused on video and multimedia capabilities. Arcos players were often larger than iPods, with bigger screens optimized for video watching. They could record television shows, play various video formats, browse photos, and some models even ran modified versions of Linux, allowing advanced users to customize extensively. For users who wanted a portable media center rather than just a music player, Arcos offered compelling options. Their devices were popular among travelers, commuters with long train rides, and anyone who wanted to watch movies on the go. But this positioning in the multimedia niche meant Arcos wasn't directly competing with the iPod for the music-only market, and they struggled to match Apple once the iPod gained video capabilities and the iPod Touch offered full multimedia features. Beyond these major players, dozens of smaller companies released iPod competitors: Coon, Philips, Samsung, RCA, Insignia, and many others. Some of these were respectable devices. Others were cheap knockoffs with poor build quality and terrible user interfaces. The market became flooded with options, but this abundance didn't translate to serious competition for Apple. The fundamental issue all competitors faced was that they were fighting multiple battles simultaneously. They had to match Apple's hardware design and quality, compete with iTunes' ease of use, challenge the iTunes Store's music library and pricing, overcome the iPod's brand cachet and cultural status, and do all of this while typically operating with smaller budgets and less integrated corporate structures than Apple. Some competitors succeeded in individual dimensions. Creative had better audio format support. iRiver had more features. SanDisk had lower prices. Sony had brand heritage. Microsoft had corporate resources. But none could match Apple across all dimensions simultaneously. And in consumer electronics, being superior in one area while inferior in others typically isn't enough. The iPod's competitors did serve important functions in the market ecosystem. They prevented Apple from becoming complacent, pushing them to continuously improve the iPod. They provided alternatives for users who couldn't afford Apple's prices or who had specific needs better served by alternative devices. And they demonstrated which features and approaches worked or didn't work, providing market feedback that helped the entire industry evolve. But the broader story of iPod competition is a lesson in how difficult it is to challenge an entrenched market leader with a strong ecosystem and powerful brand. Technical superiority isn't enough. Lower prices aren't enough. Even massive corporate resources and marketing budgets aren't enough. You need the complete package, and you need it before the leader becomes so dominant that network effects and cultural momentum make them unassailable. By 2008 to 2009, most competitors had either exited the market, accepted niche positions, or pivoted to other product categories. The battle for second place continued, but the war for first place was over. Apple had won. And ironically, just as that victory became complete, the entire market was about to be disrupted by something even more revolutionary: the smartphone. The smartphone disruption, when music became an app. On June 29, 2007, Apple released the iPhone, and the world of portable electronics began a fundamental transformation. The iPhone wasn't just a phone. It was a powerful computer that fit in a pocket, with a revolutionary touchscreen interface, internet connectivity, and the ability to run third-party applications. And crucially, it included a full-featured iPod app that could play music with all the capabilities of a standalone iPod. Initially, the iPhone's impact on the iPod business was minimal. The iPhone was expensive, $499 or $599 depending on storage capacity, and locked to AT&T in the United States, limiting its market. Many people owned both an iPhone and an iPod, using the phone for communication and the iPod for music to save the iPhone's battery life or storage space. But the trajectory was clear. Why carry two devices when one could do both jobs? As iPhone storage capacities increased, prices decreased through carrier subsidies, and battery life improved. The logic of carrying a separate music player weakened. The iPhone offered significant advantages beyond just consolidation. You could purchase music directly from the iTunes store on the device without needing a computer, browse music while doing other tasks, and share what you were listening to on social media. The iPhone also introduced something that would prove even more disruptive to music ownership than the device itself: the app ecosystem. When Apple opened the App Store in July 2008, developers could create applications for the iPhone, including music apps. Streaming services like Pandora and Spotify, which launched its mobile app in 2009, offered access to millions of songs for monthly subscription fees or even free with advertisements. Streaming services fundamentally changed the economics and psychology of music. Instead of purchasing songs or albums individually and building a personal library, users could pay $10 per month for unlimited access to tens of millions of tracks. The value proposition was staggering. For the price of one album per month, you could listen to essentially all music ever recorded. Streaming also eliminated the need for storage management. With an iPod, you had to decide which songs to carry and which to leave on your computer. With streaming, everything was available instantly as long as you had internet connectivity. Offline playback features, added later, let subscribers download songs temporarily for listening without connection. The shift from ownership to access represented a fundamental change in how people related to music. Previous generations had built collections, taking pride in their carefully accumulated libraries. They could look at their shelves of CDs or vinyl and see their musical identity reflected back. Digital music and iPods had already made collections invisible, stored as files rather than physical objects. Streaming made collections unnecessary. Why own music when you could access all music? This transition wasn't instantaneous. Throughout the early 2000s, many people continued buying music from iTunes or other digital stores, maintaining their personal libraries. Older users, in particular, felt uncomfortable with the idea of subscription services. What happens if you stop paying? Do you lose access to your music? The concept of renting rather than owning music felt alien to people who had grown up buying albums. But younger users, especially teenagers and college students, embraced streaming enthusiastically. They had grown up with Napster, YouTube, and other services that offered free or cheap access to unlimited music. Paying $10 per month for legal, high-quality, unlimited access seemed like a bargain, and streaming services offered features ownership couldn't match. Algorithmic recommendations suggesting new music based on your tastes, curated playlists for every mood and activity, easy sharing and discovery through social features, Spotify, which launched in Europe in 2008 and the United States in 2011, became the leading music streaming service. Its free tier, supported by advertisements, allowed users to try the service without paying, and many converted to premium subscriptions to remove ads and enable offline listening. Apple responded with Apple Music in 2015, leveraging their existing iTunes customer base and integration with iOS devices. As streaming grew, music downloads declined. iTunes Store sales peaked in 2012 and fell steadily thereafter. People were buying fewer songs and albums because they could stream instead. This trend accelerated as mobile data networks improved, first with 4G LTE and later 5G, making streaming anywhere practical. Why store music locally when you could stream it reliably? The rise of streaming and smartphones dealt a double blow to standalone music players. Smartphones eliminated the need for a separate device, and streaming eliminated the need for local storage and library management. Even users with enormous music collections no longer needed devices with 160 gigabytes of storage. They could stream most music and only store favorites offline. Other smartphones beyond the iPhone contributed to the iPod's decline. Android devices, which launched in 2008, rapidly gained market share, and by the early 2000s outsold iPhones globally. Android phones included music apps, supported streaming services, and offered similar capabilities to iPhones. As smartphone penetration increased, reaching over 50% of US adults by 2012, the market for standalone music players evaporated. Apple's response was to continue selling iPods while simultaneously accepting that the iPhone was the future. They kept the iPod Touch, Nano, and Shuffle in their lineup through the 2010s, but with minimal updates and little marketing emphasis. The message was clear. If you wanted the best Apple Music experience, you bought an iPhone. The iPod Classic was discontinued in 2014. The Nano and Shuffle were discontinued in 2017. As of 2024, only the iPod Touch remains, now positioned as an entry-level iOS device for children, or as a Wi-Fi only alternative to the iPhone, rather than primarily as a music player. The iPod era, which had dominated portable music for a decade, was effectively over. Looking back, the speed of the transition is striking. In 2007, dedicated music players dominated portable listening. By 2012, just 5 years later, smartphones had largely replaced them. By 2017, dedicated music players were niche products. This rapid obsolescence demonstrated both the pace of technological change and the power of convergence. Multi-purpose devices outcompeting single-purpose ones. The smartphone's victory over dedicated music players was part of a broader pattern of convergence. Smartphones also replaced or diminished demand for GPS devices, digital cameras, portable gaming devices, e-readers, calculators, voice recorders, and many other specialized electronics. The Swiss Army knife approach, one device doing many things competently, proved more appealing to most users than carrying multiple specialized devices. There's a parallel between the smartphone disrupting the iPod and the iPod disrupting the Walkman and Discman. In each case, new technology offered significant advantages that made previous solutions obsolete. The Walkman freed music from rooms. The iPod freed it from physical media. the smartphone freed it from dedicated devices. Each transition met resistance from people emotionally attached to previous technologies, but the advantages proved overwhelming. However, the smartphone era also represented losses. Dedicated music players offered focus. When you used an iPod, you engaged with music without the distraction of notifications, social media, or the internet. The smartphone's power is also its curse. You can't just listen to music without being tempted or interrupted by everything else the device can do. Some users, recognizing this, have recently gravitated back to dedicated music players, or even older technologies like vinyl records and cassette tapes, seeking a more focused, intentional listening experience. The streaming era also changed how we listen to music. With unlimited access, people often sample music superficially, rather than deeply engaging with albums. Playlists and shuffle mode fragment albums into individual tracks. Context and sequencing, elements that artists carefully craft, disappear. The ritual of choosing an album, sitting down, and listening from beginning to end has become rare, replaced by background music accompanying other activities. But these losses should be weighed against gains. Streaming has made music more accessible than ever before. Genres, artists, and songs that would have been impossible to discover in physical media era are instantly available. Independent artists can reach global audiences without label support. Users can explore music adventurously without financial risk. Why not try an unfamiliar genre when it costs nothing? The smartphone disruption of portable music wasn't just technological, it was cultural and economic. It changed how music is distributed, how artists are compensated, how users discover and engage with music, and what role music plays in daily life. Understanding this transition is essential to understanding modern music culture. Social and cultural impact. How portable music changed us. The evolution from Walkman to Discman to iPod to smartphone wasn't just about technology becoming smaller, more powerful, and more capable. These devices fundamentally changed human behavior, social norms, and cultural practices in ways that extended far beyond music consumption. To understand the true impact of portable music, we need to examine how it reshaped our relationship with public space, personal identity, social interaction, and the structure of daily experience. The most immediate and visible impact of portable music was the creation of what sociologists call personal stereoculture, or auditory bubbles. Before the Walkman, public spaces had shared soundscapes. Everyone on a bus or train heard the same ambient noise, engine sounds, conversations, street noise. The Walkman allowed individuals to opt out of this shared experience, creating private auditory environments in public spaces. This capability had profound effects on urban life. Cities, particularly large cities, can be overwhelming. Noise, crowds, visual stimulation bombarding the senses constantly. Portable music provided a tool for managing this sensory overload. Commuters could transform their crowded morning train ride into a personal concert. Joggers could create motivational soundtracks for their runs. Students could study in libraries with white noise or concentration music, blocking distractions. The ability to control your auditory environment gave people a sense of agency in situations where they otherwise had little control. You couldn't choose who sat next to you on the bus, but you could choose what you heard. This control reduced stress and anxiety for many people, making urban life more bearable. However, this personal auditory space also raised social concerns. Critics worried that portable music made people antisocial, disconnected from their communities and surroundings. Commuters who previously might have struck up conversations with strangers or simply observed their fellow passengers now withdrew into private worlds. The argument was that portable music atomized society, replacing shared public experience with isolated individual experiences. There's truth to both perspectives. Portable music did reduce random social interactions in public spaces. People wearing headphones signal unavailability for conversation, and most of us have learned to respect that signal. But this isn't necessarily negative. Much forced social interaction in public spaces is unwelcome. Unwanted conversations, catcalling, aggressive panhandling. Headphones provide a socially acceptable way to establish boundaries and claim personal space. Moreover, portable music didn't eliminate community, it shifted it. Music fans form communities around shared tastes, discovering each other online or through visible displays of musical affiliation. Band t-shirts, buttons, patches. The mixtape culture created intimate connections between individuals. Concert-going became more precious precisely because it was a rare shared musical experience in a world of otherwise private listening. Portable music also changed the experience of physical activities and exercise. Before the Walkman, most exercise occurred in silence or to whatever ambient sound was available. The Walkman and its successors made personalized workout soundtracks possible, and research consistently showed that music improved exercise performance, motivation, and enjoyment. This relationship between music and exercise became so strong that entire musical genres and subgenres developed specifically for workout contexts. High-energy electronic dance music, motivational hip-hop, fast-tempo rock. These became staples of gym culture. Spotify and other streaming services created countless workout playlists for every type of exercise and intensity level. The assumption that exercise should be accompanied by music became so normalized that exercising in silence now seems odd to many people. Music's role in exercise extended beyond just motivation. It provided rhythm for movement, particularly in activities like running or cycling. It distracted from physical discomfort, making challenging workouts more tolerable. It created positive associations with exercise, making people more likely to maintain fitness habits. Public health researchers have suggested that portable music contributed to increased exercise participation in populations that might otherwise have been sedentary. Portable music also transformed commuting. For millions of people, commutes are dead time, necessary but unproductive periods spent traveling between home and work. Portable music reclaimed this time, making it enjoyable or at least tolerable. Commuters developed personalized rituals around their commute music, specific playlists for morning versus evening, music to energize in the morning or decompress after work, podcasts or audiobooks for learning during otherwise wasted time. The psychological research on commute satisfaction found that personal music was one of the most significant factors in commute quality. People who listened to music during commutes reported higher satisfaction and lower stress than those who didn't. This effect was particularly strong for long commutes, over 30 minutes, where music transformed an ordeal into a more pleasant experience. portable music's impact on personal identity formation, particularly among adolescents and young adults, was substantial. Musical taste has always been a marker of identity, but portable music made this relationship more intense and immediate. Your iPod's library was a direct reflection of your personality, taste, and values. What music you loaded onto your device, what playlists you created, what you listened to in different situations, all of these became expressions of self. For teenagers navigating identity formation, portable music provided a tool for experimentation and exploration. They could try on different musical identities, goth, punk, hip-hop, indie, without public commitment. They could explore emotions through music privately, finding songs that articulated feelings they couldn't express themselves. The privacy of headphone listening meant adolescents could engage with music that might be embarrassing or confusing if played publicly. The visibility of portable music devices also contributed to identity signaling. Owning an iPod, particularly early in its release, signaled cultural awareness, sufficient disposable income, and alignment with Apple's brand values of creativity and innovation. The white earbuds became status symbols, instantly identifying someone as an iPod owner. Fashion developed around portable music, with clothing designed to accommodate devices and headphones becoming accessories that express style. Different music devices also signaled different identities. iPod users might be seen as trendy and design-conscious. Zune users might be seen as contrarian or Microsoft loyalists. High-end audiophile players signal serious music fandom. Cheap, generic MP3 players signaled pragmatism or lower socioeconomic status. These associations weren't necessarily fair or accurate, but they existed, and people were aware of them when choosing devices. Portable music changed listening habits in significant ways. With entire music collections portable, people could satisfy any mood or desire instantly. Feeling sad? Cue up heartbreak songs. Need energy? Switch to high-tempo dance music. Want to reminisce? Play music from your high school years. This ability to soundtrack life precisely to emotional needs was unprecedented. However, this convenience also had effects on attention and engagement with music. When music is always available, always in the background, it can become wallpaper, present but not truly attended to. Some researchers and critics worried that portable music encouraged superficial listening, where music accompanies other activities rather than being the primary focus of attention. The iPod's shuffle feature exemplified this shift toward background listening. Shuffle mode randomizes playback, treating your library as a pool to sample from, rather than a collection of intentionally sequenced albums. While shuffle can create surprising and delightful juxtapositions, it also fragments the album experience that artists carefully craft. This fragmentation accelerated with streaming services, which treat individual tracks as the atomic unit of music. Rather than albums, playlists curated by algorithms or users mix tracks from different artists, genres, and eras, judged solely by whether they fit the playlist's mood or purpose. The concept of the album as an artistic statement, a set of songs meant to be experienced together in order, has weakened significantly in the streaming era. Yet this same fragmentation has positive aspects. Users can create highly personalized musical experiences tailored to specific needs. They can discover unexpected connections between disparate artists. They can engage with music from across history and geography simultaneously, creating eclectic tastes that wouldn't have been possible when discovery was limited by what physical media was available locally. Portable music also changed the pace and structure of daily life. With personal soundtracks accompanying previously silent activities, transitions became smoother and waiting became more tolerable. Standing in line, sitting in waiting rooms, walking between locations, all these interstitial moments could now be filled with music. This represented a shift toward constant stimulation and away from quiet reflection or boredom. Some critics argued this was detrimental, that boredom and silence serve important psychological functions. They allow mind wandering, creativity, and integration of experiences. By eliminating these empty moments, portable music might reduce contemplation and self-reflection. Others countered that urban life already provided more than enough unwanted stimulation, and that portable music helped people maintain mental health by managing sensory input. The truth likely varies by individual and context. For some people, constant music is overstimulation. For others, it's necessary regulation. For some situations, silence is valuable. For others, music enhances experience. Portable music expanded choice, allowing people to decide when they wanted music and when they wanted silence, rather than being subject to whatever soundscape their environment provided. Portable music's social impact also extended to changing norms around noise and sound. Before portable music became ubiquitous, playing music in public spaces often meant others could hear it too. Boomboxes, car stereos, transistor radios. Conflicts over unwanted noise were common. Portable music with headphones privatized sound, reducing these conflicts. Listening to music became a solitary rather than communal activity by default, with speaker-based listening becoming more special and intentional. This shift had implications for public behavior and etiquette. New norms emerged. Don't talk to people wearing headphones unless necessary. Remove headphones when someone addresses you. Keep volume low enough that others can't hear it. Leaking from your headphones. These norms vary culturally, but they exist in some form wherever portable music is common. The long-term cultural impact of portable music, from Walkman through smartphone, is still unfolding. We've now raised generations of people who have never known a world without the ability to carry music everywhere. For them, portable music isn't remarkable technology, it's baseline expectation. How this shapes their relationship to music, public space, attention, and community remains an ongoing research question. What we can say with certainty is that portable music technology fundamentally transformed human experience in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. It gave individuals unprecedented control over their auditory environment, changed how we navigate public spaces, reshaped exercise and commuting culture, provided tools for identity formation and emotional regulation, and altered listening habits and music industry economics. These devices weren't just gadgets, they were agents of cultural change. Legacy and modern nostalgia, what we lost and gained. In 2024, portable music is ubiquitous, invisible, and taken for granted. Nearly everyone with a smartphone can access tens of millions of songs instantly through streaming services. Music accompanies us everywhere. Workouts, commutes, work, study, shopping, waiting, walking. The promise of 1,000 songs in your pocket that seemed miraculous in 2001 now seems quaintly limited compared to the unlimited libraries available through streaming. Yet despite the convenience and superiority of modern music access, there's a growing nostalgia for the devices and experiences of earlier portable music eras. Vinyl records, cassette tapes, and even physical CDs have seen revival among younger listeners who never experienced them in their original heyday. What drives this nostalgia? And what does it tell us about what we've lost in the transition to instant, unlimited access? Part of the nostalgia is aesthetic. Vintage portable music devices have distinctive designs that modern smartphones can't replicate. The click wheel of the iPod Classic, the mechanical satisfaction of inserting a cassette and pressing play on a Walkman, the tangible weight of a Discman. These provided tactile and visual pleasures that touchscreens don't offer. Modern smartphones are functionally superior, but aesthetically homogeneous. They all look like glass rectangles. Vintage devices had personality. The nostalgia also reflects longing for focus and limitation. A Walkman played cassettes and did nothing else. This limitation was also freedom. Freedom from distraction, from notification, from the attention economy's constant demands. When you listened to music on a Walkman, you engaged with music, not with texts, emails, social media, or the internet. The single-purpose device enforced a kind of mindfulness that's difficult to maintain with smartphones. Similarly, the limitations of physical media forced engagement. With a Walkman, you could carry perhaps 5 or 6 cassettes comfortably. This scarcity meant you chose carefully, lived with your choices, and listened deeply to the music you had. You couldn't skip a song you were ambivalent about and immediately stream something else. You listened or you went without music. This constraint encouraged patience and attention that unlimited choice undermines. The mixtape phenomenon represents much of what people miss about earlier portable music eras. Creating a mixtape required time, thought, technical skill, and personal investment. It was a craft, an art form, a gesture of care. Modern playlists can be created in seconds, rearranged instantly, and shared effortlessly. They're more convenient, but less meaningful. The difference between spending hours carefully recording a mixtape for someone and spending 30 seconds creating a Spotify playlist is the difference between a handwritten letter and a text message. One is more precious precisely because it's more difficult. The nostalgia also reflects discomfort with the subscription economy. Earlier portable music eras were based on ownership. You bought albums or tracks, and they were yours permanently. You built a collection that represented your identity and investment. Streaming services offer access, not ownership. Stop paying your monthly fee, and your entire library disappears. For people who came of age in ownership eras, this feels precarious and unsatisfying. Moreover, streaming services' algorithms and recommendations, while often helpful, can feel manipulative or limiting. They predict what you'll like based on what you've listened to, potentially creating filter bubbles that narrow rather than expand musical horizons. In the physical media era, discovery was more serendipitous. A friend's recommendation, an interesting album cover in a store, a random song on the radio. These chance encounters with unfamiliar music felt more authentic than algorithmic suggestions. The collector culture that developed around physical media is also largely lost in streaming. Record stores, where you could spend hours browsing, chatting with staff and other customers, discovering unexpected albums, have mostly disappeared. The physical objects, album artwork, liner notes, lyrics printed in CD booklets, provided context and aesthetic pleasure beyond just the music. Streaming's convenience came at the cost of this material culture. In response to these losses, a revival of interest in physical media and vintage playback devices has emerged, particularly among younger listeners. Vinyl record sales have grown consistently since 2005, with many newer albums released on vinyl alongside digital formats. Cassette tapes have seen a smaller but notable revival among indie musicians and collectors. Even CDs are finding renewed appreciation among listeners seeking an alternative to streaming. Vintage portable music devices, original Walkmans, iPod classics, and other players have become collectible items, selling on eBay and specialized vintage electronic sites for significant prices. Some people use them practically, appreciating the focused listening experience they enable. Others display them as nostalgic artifacts or aesthetic objects. There are online communities dedicated to maintaining, repairing, and modifying vintage portable music players, keeping them functional decades after their manufacture. This nostalgia isn't just backward-looking romanticism. It represents genuine recognition that newer technology, while superior in many measurable ways, doesn't necessarily provide better human experiences in all dimensions. Convenience, choice, and accessibility are valuable, but so are focus, limitation, and ownership. The ideal perhaps lies not in returning to earlier technologies entirely, but in selectively incorporating their virtues into modern life. Some people practice this integration intentionally. They might use streaming services for discovery and casual listening, but purchase physical copies of albums they love. They might listen to playlists most of the time, but occasionally dedicate uninterrupted attention to listening to a full album on vinyl. They might use their smartphone for most purposes, but keep a vintage iPod for workouts to avoid distraction. This approach seeks to capture the benefits of both eras. The legacy of portable music evolution extends beyond nostalgia and revival. The devices and technologies we've discussed, Walkman, Discman, iPod, smartphone, trained multiple generations in the expectations and behaviors that define our current relationship with technology. They normalize carrying sophisticated electronics everywhere. They established expectations for intuitive user interfaces, seamless synchronization between devices, and ecosystem integration. They proved that consumers would pay premium prices for superior design and user experience. The iPod specifically deserves recognition for establishing principles that Apple carried forward into subsequent products. The iPhone's multi-touch interface was revolutionary, but the iPhone's overall product philosophy, premium materials, obsessive attention to detail, elegant simplicity, ecosystem integration, came directly from the iPod. The iPad, Apple Watch, and AirPods all reflect lessons learned during the iPod era. More broadly, the iPod demonstrated that traditional electronics companies could be disrupted by companies with superior design, software, and ecosystem integration. This lesson inspired countless startups and influenced how established companies approached product development. The iPod showed that being first to market mattered less than being best to market with the complete package. The evolution from Walkman to smartphone also illustrated the inexorable progression toward convergence. Single-purpose devices give way to multi-purpose ones as technology advances. This pattern has played out across numerous categories. Cameras being replaced by smartphones, GPS devices becoming apps, e-readers competing with tablets, and potentially VR/AR headsets consolidating many functions. Understanding this pattern helps us anticipate future technological shifts. The music industry was permanently transformed by portable digital music. The iPod and iTunes Store began the transition from physical sales to digital, and streaming services completed it. Today, physical media accounts for a small fraction of music revenue, with streaming dominant. This shift changed how artists are compensated, how labels operate, and how music is marketed and discovered. For better and worse, music became more accessible, but also potentially less valuable. When everything is available, nothing is special. Looking forward, spatial audio, AI-generated music, interactive listening experiences, and other innovations will continue evolving portable music. But these future developments will build on foundations laid by the Walkman, Discman, and iPod. These devices proved that people wanted portable music desperately enough to overcome technical limitations and adopt new formats and habits. They established the template. Devices should be small, attractive, intuitive, and integrated with services and ecosystems. Music should be instantly accessible, personalized, and portable. The story of portable music evolution is ultimately about human desire. The desire for control, for beauty, for connection through art, for personal soundtracks to accompany life's journey. Technology has made increasingly sophisticated expressions of this desire possible, from the crude but revolutionary Walkman to today's sophisticated streaming services accessed through powerful smartphones. Each era had its virtues and limitations, its champions and critics, its winners and losers. The Walkman freed music from rooms but required cassettes. The Discman offered superior sound but struggled with skip resistance. The iPod eliminated physical media but required purchasing digital files. Smartphones provide unlimited access but can distract from full engagement. Progress isn't linear or unambiguous. Each advance brings trade-offs. What remains constant across all these eras is the fundamental human joy of having music accompany you through life. Whether it's a teenager in 1984 jogging with a Walkman, a college student in 1998 studying with a Discman, a commuter in 2005 riding the subway with an iPod, or someone today streaming music through wireless earbuds while walking through a park, the essential experience is similar. Music making life's moments richer, more bearable, more meaningful. The devices change, the formats change, the business models change, but the desire to carry beauty with us, to soundtrack our experiences, to find solace and joy and energy in music wherever we go, that desire is timeless. The evolution of portable music is the story of technology serving that desire with increasing sophistication, and that story continues.